Hello and welcome. The goal of this podcast is to get listeners connected with others in the sports industry because they say it's all about who you know, and now you know us. Hello and welcome, everybody. This is your host, Connor Shank, and as you can see, we have Mr. Callan Kuhlmann on the podcast today. He has been on a number of times as we've interviewed others, but today he is on the hot seat. So we're looking forward to getting to know Callan, a little bit about his sports industry experience. And as he is now with a company, I'm not going to give it away yet, but he is in the sports industry. So we'll be able to connect and talk more. And for those listening and viewing on YouTube, this is the 36th episode. So we're excited to continue this here with Callan. And now Callan, his current role, he's at Intersport based in Chicago there, and he's in the strategic partnerships division. So Mr. Kuhlmann, why don't you kind of give us a little roadmap, kind of how you ended up, at Intersport, kind of what inspired you to go down the sports industry to start?
Yeah, absolutely. Just wanted to say, really glad to be on. Obviously, I was kind of part of, helping you as well as Sal kind of start this whole thing, and you reached out to us and had the idea, and it's great to see the stuff you're still doing. Met a lot of cool people through it, and it's fun to be on the other side. But yeah, I'm started at Intersport about 4 months ago, beginning of October, end of 2023. Like you mentioned, in the strategic partnerships division, and I've been loving it so far. I'm sure we can kind of get into that role, a little bit down the road here, but sort of the path, I grew up, it's typical, it's what everyone says, but wanted to be in the industry just because it's what I grew up loving. And went to University of Oregon because they offered a major in sports business. I will say I wish I did a little bit more with my sports business degree while I was there, but I had a great time and loved the school, that's for sure. And then you and I got to know each other from the SLB program at Arizona State in the College of Law. And, from there, I was able to get an internship at Priority Sports and Entertainment, which is more of a uh, player representation side of the business on the agency side, but player focused. And that's actually why I ended up moving out to Chicago about a year and a half ago now, which is kind of crazy. Time's flying. And that ended, and took a little bit of time away from the industry to figure out what I wanted to do. As everyone knows, it's never a straight path. But then landed at Intersport in the role I'm at now, and absolutely love it. I think everything kind of worked out for a reason, and I'm definitely on the right path to doing what I want to do.
Yeah, no doubt. And kind of going off of that there, can you recall maybe a specific moment or event that kind of set you on this path, maybe to where you're at today? Because and previously, some of your work experience has been kind of with the basketball agency, specifically with the marketing endorsements, that type of thing. So,
Yep.
just curious. This is a little bit of a different spin-off, kind of same realm, but yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's definitely a little different. Parts of the business are different, but still a lot of similarities when crossing over. And I think the thing that'll always stick out to me is the first sort of real world in-person internship experience I was able to get in the industry was between my junior and senior year at Oregon. And it's by far the coolest role I've had to this day, which was quite the way to start your career, I guess. But I was out in Vegas for a summer and got to intern at the marketing arm that reps Shaquille O'Neal and Jason Tatum. So was kind of around those two, especially Shaq, a lot, which was very eye-opening as that being kind of my first, like I said, real in-person experience. Excuse me. And that was a lot of, like you mentioned, the marketing and endorsement side of stuff, working with some of his partners, and realized kind of that's when the path started where, hey, I always thought I wanted to be an agent, but I think I enjoy the marketing and the endorsement and off-court stuff. I enjoy that side more than, dealing more personally with the players and player contracts and everything along that route. So that really sparked my interest in the marketing side of things. And then kind of since then, everything I've been a part of or looked for has been on that marketing slash partnership side of things. And then now in my current role, it's obviously not athlete focused at all. It's more property focused.
Yep.
But on that partnership side of things, because I've realized that I enjoy kind of I don't know if matching is the right word, but figuring out what sort of brands and products would be a good fit for specific things. And kind of, I've loved diving into that whole process, but I would say just that first internship experience working on the marketing and endorsement side of things really is what piqued my interest kind of down this road.
Right, right. And then so now you've gone from different basketball agencies, NBA Summer League, et cetera, et cetera. And now you made your way to Intersport, as we've touched on. So for those listeners and viewers who maybe don't know what Intersport is, can you kind of run them through maybe a little, behind the scenes, kind of what Intersport does? You mentioned they work with properties, brands, et cetera. Kind of so a little spiel on Intersport, and then lead into kind of your role specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, when I kind of first started at Intersport and when I was kind of going through the job process, I couldn't even really tell you what it was because
Yep.
it's a marketing agency is the best way I would put it that operates in so many different levels and verticals that still after being there for months, there's parts of our business that I'm not fully versed in and know that much about. But kind of an overview, I would split it into two sides. We have a property side, which is what I sit on, which includes basketball, like a basketball vertical, which is what I'm on. We have a golf vertical, where we put on a couple different golf tournaments throughout the year. We also do stuff. The other side is on the agency services side of things. So think typical big agency who works with big brands and focuses on sort of the client service aspect of that. So we've worked with Dos Equis and Heineken and Chase and a bunch of different brands, and that's what I would consider the other side. So I don't deal much with that side. I actually kind of deal, I guess, if you think of these big brands that that side of the house is working with, like those are the type of people that I'm trying to talk to get interested in a partnership with
Right.
the vertical that I'm on. So it's cool how it all works together and fits together. But that's kind of a whole overview of everything. And then my specific role that I'm well versed in within the company is, like I mentioned, on the basketball side. So we operate a bunch of events. It could be single game events. They could be tournaments in the fall throughout the college basketball season. I believe we had 8 events this past fall, and then we also operate the high school and college slam dunk and 3-point competition, which is in the Final Four host city every year. So kind of part of Final Four week leading up to one of the biggest sports marketing weekends of the year.
Yep.
So you really get the full overview and full course of the basketball season. Our first event was right at the beginning of November, and then we continue until the beginning of April with Final Four events, and then you start over and you've got a dozen or so more events next fall. So there's always something going on, but I specifically sit on the partnership side of things. So all of our events, we own and operate them. So controlling partnership sales, media sales, everything in between. And then we have an operational team that helps run the events and gets the teams there and everything related to that. But I sit on the partnership side and assist in any way that I can, whether it's with a title partner, a presenting partner, an official partner, or someone just looking for any sort of little activation opportunity at this specific event. And it's been awesome so far.
Yeah, no, I mean, and as we've talked before, sponsorships and the partnerships is something that obviously you're obviously interested in. I think it's a very cool aspect, and I think growing up in sports, and maybe like watching sports and thing, you just see all these brands, but at least for me growing up, I was like, "Oh, okay, didn't think much of it, but it's really, one of the biggest facets of the sport industry is the naming rights, is the brand activations and things like that. So as far as you've, gone in your career with the activations and with reaching out and prospecting, what are some ways that you found best for those listeners and viewers that, maybe they're in a similar role, prospecting or trying to get a hold of brands and companies? Like, how are you pitching Intersport in your basketball vertical, I guess is my question.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can kind of speak on what we're doing right now because it's relevant on February 7th is like I mentioned, we do the high school and college slam dunk and 3-point competitions, and then we
Yep.
actually added this year as part of the women's Final Four weekend, we're doing a women's college all-star game. which hasn't been around before. And with, the growth we're seeing in women's basketball with Caitlin Clark, and everyone knows who she is, and sees her all over. We felt this would be a good opportunity to sort of bring that in. And so also selling partnerships and working on the event there. But what we're doing specifically right now is treating this, and why it's able to be successful is because it's really the only way for brands to get involved with NCAA Final Four weekend, if they're not an NCAA corporate partner.
Right.
So all the advertising you'll see at the actual semifinals and the national championship game, those all come through the NCAA. The NCAA controls that. So those are going to be NCAA corporate partners that have the rights to that. Your question was based on kind of where have you found success? And, I learned this through my boss and sort of watching him and assisting him and following what he does. We treat this, we use the exact words as, this is a backdoor way into NCAA Final Four weekend to make your brand stand out and have relevance. And it's really, really the only way to do it. And so we've found success through that. And so I think to kind of answer your question as a whole, it's important to showcase or show why this specific event that you're selling, like why it matters for that specific brand and why it'll help them out. So that's a perfect example with the Final Four. And then, we handled the Fort Myers tip-off down in Florida, men's and women's tournaments. Like there, we've kind of found success going through some local Florida companies, that are going to want to get their advertising out there to the local community, and then also have the games, on Fox and FS1, so they'll get that national presence as well. So it's really all about just finding companies that would be the right fit, whether it's for location or objectives that the company's interested in, or any sort of category that you can kind of decipher.
Yeah, no, and I wanted to touch a little bit on the aspect of kind of, you mentioned the women's game and the women's industry and things like that. So that was going to lead me into one of my questions regarding kind of the evolution of the industry itself. With maybe we can just talk about kind of some of the events that are going on that Intersport hosts, or maybe other teams or leagues. But where do you see the industry in that aspect, as far as maybe preseason games, overseas games? I mean, do you think Intersport or someone else will kind of get into that a little bit more now that sports business and sports is becoming more international in the college level?
That's a good question. I don't really know sort of how far you can push the boundaries college-wise from an
Right.
international perspective. I will say you're seeing more of these sort of one-off college events occurring. If you look probably 20 years ago, specifically in college basketball, you didn't have all these, like this year we did Gonzaga against UConn in Seattle. Like
Hmm.
you didn't used to have all these one-off events, but it's because there's more of a platform for college sports now.
Right.
And specifically sticking on the women's side, we brought up the Women's College All-Star Game. We're also creating so if you think women's college volleyball gaining a
Hmm.
lot of popularity, the Final Four in volleyball about a month ago was the most watched women's college volleyball semifinals and national championship ever, and it beat it by a massive margin. So there's popularity growing there as well. And if you think about it, because volleyball has been a little bit underrepresented in the past, there's no preseason volleyball
Hmm.
tournament. Or, you've got all these college basketball tournaments going on, whether it's Maui, or the Legends Classic or CBS Sports or whatever it may be. That doesn't exist for volleyball. So we're kind of turning our college sports division or our basketball division, excuse me, into more of a whole rounded college sports vertical. So Labor Day weekend in September of this coming year will be the inaugural college volleyball showcase, featuring, four of the top teams in the country. They each play two matches. There's semifinals, a championship, a third place game. So just stuff like that, coming up with new events for different sports, or just anything that can that hasn't been done before. It not only gets good exposure, like I know Sports Business Journal put out a piece about the Women's College Volleyball Showcase.
Hmm.
It's gaining a lot of traction, but it also helps from a partnership standpoint, because all these companies are going to want to be part of something special that's, happening for the first time, and it's nationally broadcast. And so to answer your question, I don't know how much you can really expand internationally. But I do think you'll continue to see a lot of, events that'll pop up, and you kind of think,
Yeah.
oh, I can't believe that hasn't been done before. But it's a matter of executing it. And that's what I've enjoyed at Intersport, is because we put on so many different events and have so many different teams. I've really kind of seen us nail that, and I'm proud to be part of the company for sure.
Yeah, it's been cool to see some of the projects you've worked on, kind of just, behind the scenes, knowing you for how, as long as I have. But maybe you can touch on that a little bit. Maybe it doesn't have to be with Intersport, it could be somewhere else. I know you mentioned your time over working with Shaq and Jason Tatum, but would that be kind of some of your favorite projects or favorite project you've worked on, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I would definitely say it's one of them, is all the stuff I did over there. Specifically Intersport wise, I kind of started basically a couple weeks before the college basketball season started.
Yep.
So kind of thrown into the fire, which obviously is a little stressful. And my boss would joke around about being thrown into the fire, but it's way better than, not being busy. I'll tell you
Yep.
that. So to be honest, everything kind of blended together the first couple months, because you're working on partnership aspects for all these different tournaments that are back to back to back. Um, I will be in Phoenix in April for Final Four week, going to all that stuff. And we've been working on, whether it's a sales pitch, a presentation deck, prospecting, for those events for the past 6 months. And now we're obviously hitting it full force.
Yep.
So I know when I get there in person for a whole week, working on the high school slam dunk and 3-point championships, and then the college slam dunk and 3-point championships, and then the after party that's part of that. Um, I know that'll be a full circle moment where I see everything come together. So I would love to discuss that with you when it all comes back. But I'm looking forward to that one. And other than that, I haven't gotten to travel too much yet. I went to one of our events, and then actually we do a lot of work with Under Armour. So I went to the high school Under Armour All
Yep.
America Week, the football game down in Orlando. I loved it. That was awesome. I can't really say it was one of the coolest projects I've worked on, because I wasn't part of anything leading up to the event. I basically was there and helping out once the event was going on.
No, and like we touched on, I was able to get, insider information on that and saw the cool stuff you did down there. And kind of regarding your maybe your schedule, a lot of the listeners and viewers ask about industry professionals, kind of how they go about their day and things like that. So give us possibly, a little breakdown. It doesn't have to be too specific, but maybe kind of things you start on just between the 9 to 5 kind of work day, emailing maybe at the beginning of the day, cold calls, whatever it is. Just run us through kind of a day in the life of Mr. Coleman.
Yeah, I mean, right now, my boss and I used to meet just twice a week, but now that Final Four is ramping up and there's a lot going on, we meet first thing in the morning for 30 minutes
Mm.
every day. So we're in office Tuesday through Thursday, so that'll be in person. Monday through Friday, we're from home, so just a Teams call, obviously. But usually in those meetings, there's stuff that came up overnight that a brand we're talking to responded, or there's a new, proposal coming in where I've got to go fix something in the deck or fix an asset that we're offering. And stuff just kind of changes nonstop. It's a mix of current proposals that are out there and that we're building for people that I've got to help work on. It's a mix of prospecting different brands that could be a good fit for Final Four opportunities. It's a mix of cold outreach
Yep.
to different companies and then following up with that outreach. So it's kind of a never-ending cycle where you're never going to spend all day on, oh, I'm just going to look at all these potential brands that can be a good fit, because something will come up where there's something in the pipeline, and your team needs something put together in the next 24 hours. Or you're never going to spend all day working on different prospects that are in the works, because there's more goals that need to be met. So we need to go find a dozen more companies that we can reach out to today that could be a good fit. So to answer your question, I never, it's cliche and everyone says it, but there's no one day that's the
Right.
same. There's always something different going on. Um, and it may be a little bit stressful at times, but I love what I'm doing and I love being busy. So it's also at all hours of the day. There's my boss, and I'll give this to him, very hard worker. I've enjoyed working for him. He's up, he's sending me emails at 9, 10, 11 p.m. almost every night with different things going on. So it's just something that never stops, and it's definitely enjoyable though.
Yeah, well, in your answer there, you touched on a little about pitch decks and things like that. And regarding your background, I'm not too familiar with your creative, work and whatnot, but I have talked to others in the industry that have kind of learned some of those skills regarding maybe like Photoshop or Adobe, things like that, making pitch decks and making things, presentable to a possible business partner or a partnership. So maybe touch base, give us a little inside scoop on are those skills that you learned? Did you do that kind of in undergrad? Kind of walk us through that. Because I know for me, making graphics and stuff was just like, especially in grad school, we were like doing fake proposals, and all of a sudden I'm knee deep in Adobe, trying to make a
Right.
edit of sorts. So I think it's just something that other listeners and viewers would like to learn more.
Yeah, so everything I had done in the past leading up to this job, I'd done on, basic PowerPoint,
Yep.
or I'd use Canva to create different stuff. So if I was making a pitch deck for an interview, I'd use Canva.
Yep.
And it would take me a while, but I would do it and I'd make it look good. And then when I started here, there's dozens of decks that need to get sent out and be edited and get done during a week. Um, and we use Photoshop for a lot of stuff,
All
which
right.
I came in, I had never opened Photoshop once in my life. Um, and so that was a process. That was actually, funny enough, the most stressful part when I started my job was figuring out how to work Photoshop. Um, which doesn't have a huge effect to the overall line of business that I'm doing. But,
Right.
prospective partners want to see what their brand would look like, activating or being involved with things
Mhm.
that you're trying to get them to do. Um, so Photoshop was essential, and kind of the girl that I took over for after she transferred to another role, she was super helpful in teaching me that, but it was a lot of learning it on your own, and reps and practicing. And after, I'd say it took me like maybe a month, and now it's you're just pumping them out like that. But to answer your question on the creative side, like that was something I'd never done before, but it's definitely important. Just like examples of when we use it is if we're pitching, 8 minutes of courtside LED signage to say it's Aflac.
Mhm.
Like we have saved pictures from different tournaments and events that we've done where you can see the
Mm.
LED. So we want to show them exactly what that would look like. So you're flipping that LED from whatever brand it was previously and then throwing Aflac is what we're using as an example, like throwing that in there. So
Mhm.
you've got to kind of act quickly on your feet and learn that process. But once you do it enough, it's super quick. And I would kind of urge anyone who's looking to get into the marketing or specifically partnership side of things, like definitely a good skill to have, because it's never a bad thing to have.
Right.
Like if you don't end up using it that often, who cares? But if you're able to kind of go in right away and say, hey, like these are skills, hard skills that are on my resume, like that's something that could kind of set you over the top.
Right. And then touching on the skills and the industry, how do you stay informed on industry trends? What resources or like publications, et cetera, do you find to be most valuable in your day-to-day in the industry?
Yeah, definitely. I try to kind of stay involved in any way that I can. So the Sports Business Daily podcast that comes out every day, that I know you and I have talked
Mhm.
about before. It's anywhere from 7 to 12 minutes that you can listen to. I've got a 45-minute train ride into the city every day, so I can pump that out real quickly. But that's just current things that are going on, whether it's the agency world, the sports business industry, kind of anything that's involved with sports as a whole. That's not super in depth, but it kind of gives you, the headlines of what's going on. To be honest, I use Sponsor United a ton.
Mhm.
I think that's a great platform, not only for helping you with prospecting, but they'll send out a bunch of different marketing and partnership reports. Like they just sent one out for the entire NFL season, so you can see every brand that was part of the NFL. Or every Monday morning, they send out the 25 hottest brands in sports right now, which, to be honest, I mean, I obviously look at those every Monday morning. A
Yeah.
lot of them, like they'll say, oh, this brand just signed with, this specific team or this event in Italy. Like I wouldn't have known that unless it was through Sponsor United. So that's been super helpful. From both a personal knowledge standpoint and then also with my job, just like
Yep.
different companies that we can bring to the table that may be a fit. Um, other than that, I mean, just kind of any sort of podcast or news sources that I can use, whether it's, as simple as ESPN or something as in-depth as the Sports Business Journal, just kind of anything out there that's relevant, it's important to know.
Right. And then are there certain books, kind of same kind of concept, certain books that you read? Are you more into the business side of the books? I don't know, I guess feel good books. What kind of books do you read to maybe stay in the industry, but then also to kind of further your career and skills?
Yeah, definitely in the more interested in the nonfiction and business, personal development side
Right.
of things. Just because I enjoy reading before bed and it's nice to, whether you read 5 pages or 20, it's nice to kind of have that extra boost
Yep.
to close out your day. Right now I'm reading a book called Better Decisions Faster, which is all about kind of skills to make the most confident decision when you're faced with different decisions in your life, whether it's from a relationship standpoint, whether or not to leave the job you're at, whether or not to close this deal. And I've enjoyed it so far. I'm only like a quarter of the way through it. But definitely books related to that. I recently read Atomic Habits, which is all
Yep.
about kind of building daily habits that, no matter how small, if you practice them over time, they can do great things for your life. So I've started reading a lot of books and I've definitely found some good ones that I enjoy.
Yep, no, I'm with you. And as you can see, this real bookcase behind me, I got a lot back here for those on YouTube watching there. So
Yeah,
I agree there, reading. I enjoy and it's good for the brain, helps you relax, things like
absolutely.
that. So that's always a plus. And kind of for the listeners and viewers, as you know, we post a lot of job openings, things like that. So for Intersport, kind of that vein of the sports industry, what are some possible career fields besides your strategic partnerships that they could be looking into going further in their career?
Yeah, I would say I've kind of noticed client services is such a big thing
Mm,
in this industry. Like I mentioned from the Intersport standpoint, if we're working with Chase or Heineken or Dos Equis, there's so many people, excuse me, that are a part of those teams, whether it's, helping them with creative ideas for stuff that could be new business ventures for them, or kind of going over how this specific partnership with this MLB team was in 2023
yep,
and giving advice on whether or not they should renew in 2024 or look to go somewhere else. I just think you see all these big companies like Endeavor and CAA, and there's a bunch of them out there, but the agency services side of thing is such a big part of it. Everyone, at least I did, when you think sports agency, I thought, oh, LeBron James, oh, Drew Brees. I was like, all you can do in an agency is represent talent, which um, that's such a small part of it.
mhm,
Whether it's marketing and partnerships side of the industry that I'm in, like basically every sporting event out there has partnerships. Someone's in charge of that. So the
right.
Waste Management Open is kicking off tomorrow. Somebody's in charge of all those brands that are going to be represented there. And it's all about doing digging, and a lot of it comes from big agencies or different brand teams. But that's kind of my biggest suggestion for you don't want to choose too narrow of a path. And that's what I've seen at least so far is that's where most people are is on that client services, agency services, brand marketing side of the business.
Yeah, no, and I like the little sentiment there of not getting too narrow of a path early on. And then regarding kind of the job industry, is there certain places you went to find openings or job entries when you were kind of looking for a role?
Yeah, so I'll say, and you know this, Connor. I mean, it took me about 7 or 8 months in between roles, where every day I was up job searching, whether it was teamwork online, whether it was LinkedIn, whether
Mhm.
it was specific company websites, kind of anything I could get my hands on. Kept a list. I submitted hundreds of applications, had probably close to 100 different cold calls, as you could call
Yeah.
them. But I feel like I found most of my success through LinkedIn. It's super easy to find someone that does something that you'd be interested in doing.
Mhm.
Shoot them a connection request and shoot a simple note that just says, "Hey, I'm Callan, and I'm very interested in the sports partnership side of the industry. Would love to have 30 minutes of your time to hear more about what you do and pick your brain." That's actually exactly how I'm in the role I'm in right now. Um, I think back in maybe May of last year, found the guy who's my current boss, just through looking through Intersport and specific roles. Sent him a cold message over LinkedIn. Just, hey, would love to connect, hear more about what you do. We set up a meeting. Went into that meeting not expecting anything other than just learning more about the guy because I'd done a ton of those in the past. And at the end, we really clicked because we're both very interested in college basketball, have the same sort of career aspirations. And at the end of the meeting, he kind of said, "Hey, I think we might have an opening soon. Would you be interested?" I said, "Absolutely." And it's a couple month process from there, but that's
Yeah.
how it all started. And everybody says it, but I experienced it firsthand. Like, you're going to if you send 100 outreach notes, like,
Oh yeah.
you might get 10 responses, and of those 10 responses, two of them you might have a conversation with, or even just a meaningful interaction where it's someone that actually seems to care about you and listen to you, while you try to take your time and figure out what they want to do. But that's my biggest suggestion. It's a grind. Use all the tools, all the different websites that are out there. Make things personal.
Mhm.
Don't give up after a dozen tries, because it takes way more than that, and eventually something will work out.
Yeah, no, and to your credit, being able to see it firsthand, putting your nose to the grindstone there, it's been cool to see. And I think that's a perfect way to wrap up here. I mean, our motto here at the Constant Sports Podcast is, what they say, it's all about who you know. And Mr. Count Kuhlmann knew a lot of people that eventually led him to his job he is in now. So we appreciate you jumping on here today, Callan. And this is going to conclude another episode of the Constant Sports Podcast. And special thanks to you for sharing your experiences and thoughts and knowledge to the listeners and viewers today. So, for the listeners and viewers, you can find this episode on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, anywhere you get podcasts. And before we go, Callan, I know you just kind of gave some parting advice, but is that, are you going to double down there? Do you have something else for the viewers?
Yeah, I mean, first off, I want to say thanks for having me. Again, it's been great watching this thing grow. I know I was a lot more involved at the beginning, and now I've been, busy with things going on at Intersport, but have always, listened and loved seeing the different guests you've had on. And I would just kind of double down and say, if anyone's looking for something, keep pushing, keep your, don't narrow in on one specific focus, kind of think of different ways that you could get involved in the industry, meet as many people as you can. Um, and I'm more than happy to be a resource for anyone. Again, I got my job by reaching out to someone, but there's hundreds of other people that I reached out to that I didn't get a job with. I'd be more than happy to listen to anyone who's looking for advice or just wants more info about whether it's my career path or sort of more info about Intersport or day to day. More than happy to set up a time to talk. And yeah, moral of the story, just it's a great industry to be in. It's fun, and it's you got to work for it. So put your head down and keep going.
Beautifully said. Yeah, thanks again, Callan. And that's listeners and viewers. Like I said, you can find us anywhere you get your podcasts and YouTube. So we will see you next week. And thanks again.
Thank you, Connor.